Hello, everyone. A very happy new year to all. GSDC Tech Talk podcast is very excited to bring to you a very special episode featuring Mr. Harsh Wardhan, an innovation leader from Google, and Mr. Adam Sandman, an agile evangelist and CEO of Inflectra Corporation.
Good morning, Adam. How are you doing?
Good, thanks, Harsh. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Great to finally meet you and have this discussion.
Yeah, likewise. It's been a nice holiday season, and we're looking forward to doing this podcast together. And thank you for the Global Skills Development Council for having us on this show together.
Plus one to that. Let's start with a quick round of intro. Would you like to go first?
Sure, why not? My name is Adam Sandman. I'm the founder and CEO of Inflectra Corporation. We're a company dedicated to quality, helping our customers improve quality in their outcomes. And our tagline is quality to its core. And as we get into this conversation, when we talk about AI and its implications, quality is one of the things I think is foremost on people's minds. I live in the Washington, D.C. area, travel a lot for work, and you can find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you. And I can't wait to hear your perspective and what you are doing with Gen AI. So excited about this. My name is Harshvardhan, and I'm a human-centered design strategist. My background is in design thinking, innovation, and strategy. I work at Google and specifically Google Cloud. And as you know, Google Cloud is an enterprise business. So for the past few years that I have been here, I have been helping develop this innovation program that we run with our key customers across the globe. This program is based on design thinking, and what we are essentially doing is using this methodology to identify the right problems to solve for, and then quickly do a fast follow to come up with a proof of concept. So that's my work.
Excellent. Nice to meet you. And we're a Google customer, so I'm very excited to see what you have in store.
Awesome. We can definitely talk about that. To get started, I think let's talk about like holistically what is Gen AI, what are the key capabilities that we are looking at, and how can we improve workplace experience using Gen AI.
That's an interesting question. And just for those on the podcast, I think you'll need to give a disclaimer as well, I believe.
Thank you so much. I was just talking about this in the backstage. Anything that I'm going to say in this particular podcast represents just my opinions and my ideas. None of this represents the company that I work for. So thank you again, Adam, for the reminder.
No problem. And one of the things, a disclaimer I have is we've been talking to some of our R&D people over the holiday break, and because they don't sleep. And anything we say, I think, is out of date in 2 months. That will be my disclaimer on a different level. We've been looking at some of the capabilities that are coming. And so when we talk about productivity and efficiency and how Gen AI is going to change that for people, anything we say is probably within a month out of date. We've been looking at, for example, multimodal generative AI, which can blend voice, image, and text. And
Yes.
things that we thought were literally impossible 2 weeks ago, we now think are possible. So we're actually in the middle of doing our roadmap for one of our products for the 2024 calendar year. And it's how do you do that? It's like the ultimate in agility and agile, because you come up with an idea and you go, well, that would be great. And you go, wait a sec, we don't even need that anymore. We've moved 10 steps beyond that. So I think in terms of improving productivity and efficiency, it's a very hard one, because what we think of as a Gen AI capability in terms of, like, say, text production, image generation. And there are some simple use cases. So to start with the simple ones, where a lot of people are using it to write blogs, to generate SEO content, to do proofing, to do taking technical documentation and making it human accessible, like a user manual. And then there's things like graphics. So people often, if you look at what people do on, say, Canva or other graphics tools, a lot of the time it's taking a nice image on the background, putting text over it with some company messaging and a logo, and it takes maybe an hour. Well, that's a classic use case for Gen AI, which can turn that in a few minutes. So it's allowing people to do these relatively mundane, boring tasks that humans were doing and turning it into a automated process. But the thing is, we're already getting beyond that. That was probably a month ago. We're now looking at capabilities where it can create multimodal, it can write text, then turn into an image, and it can navigate real applications all for you. So I think the question will be, efficiency, we're not at the end state. When we look at the steam engine or other technologies, or even the internet, we looked at it and how it improved things after the technology was out there. I think we're still in that innovation phase. So I do think it's been very hard to say what are going to be the improved productivity and efficiencies for people, because it's still an evolving art. That's my thought so far, anyway.
I mean, I think that's very spot on, Adam. I would say, uh, taking a step back around like what is generative AI, just for the audience.
Good
Uh,
point.
very, very simply put, the definition is in the name itself. So, artificial intelligence that has been trained on large data sets. These are based on large language models. Um, they help you to generate stuff. And when I say stuff, it could be text, which is the most basic format that we have seen. That's how it began. It can generate images, it can generate music, it can generate videos, it can, like Adam said, it can be multimodal and generate all of those and combine them. And that's just the scratching the surface. It's like, I mean, I can't agree with you more, Adam. We are just at the cusp of this innovation. And the way that I looked at it, I had an epiphany when I went to the Computer History Museum recently, in the Bay Area. And the museum starts with the calculator. And when I say calculator, these are not the digital ones that we are used to. These are the original calculators like abacus, and the mechanical ones.
Oh, right. Yeah. The wooden ones with the wheels. Yeah. Step wheel reckoner.
Yeah, and the ones that Charles Babbage designed.
Yep.
Babbage,
Difference engine.
it's phenomenal to see how far we have come. And this is that moment in time again. It's I would say it's very simplistic to compare it to the calculator, because AI is much more faster. This development is much more faster, like you indicated. It changes day by day. So I think, yes, we are scratching the surface, and how it is going to change the workplace is going to be unprecedented in time. And I think we can only imagine and prepare for it at this moment.
That is true. And I think the other interesting thing about, we talk about, or people worry about it doing certain tasks and freeing up workers to do other tasks. And the idea is the machines will do the grunt work and we will do the strategic work. But it's much more than that, because I know people who are using it to do generative AI. And as you said,
Yeah,
generative AI is only one strand of the AI development
yeah,
that's going on. There's other forms of AI where we're looking at large data sets, large data models, where we're reducing data to find patterns, which is a completely alternate strand of AI right now. But even on the generative side by itself, they're using it to generate financial forecasts. I know someone who uses it to generate discounted cash flow analysis because he's too lazy to get Excel and do it.
yeah.
And you give it the end state and it generates backwards. It can do reasoning. Um, and so the other thing is, I work in the software testing industry. So one of the tasks that we often think about is testing. And everyone's mind was, okay, generative AI will take away the boring tasks, the regression tests. If you ever have to do software testing as a human, you have to click through an application 100 times the same screens and do the various things. And the idea was a computer can automate that. Now, we have automated testing tools that already exist, but they tend to require a lot of human work to make them work. So the thinking was that generative AI would make that much more automated. But still, humans would do what we used to call exploratory testing. The idea is a new application that no one's seen before, and it will test it. Well, guess what? Generative AI can do that too. Two of our R&D folks did this crazy thing where they went out. They asked, I think it was ChatGPT 4, one of the most multimodal versions. They said, "I want to order a pizza. Can you test how I would do that?" It wrote an entire user flow of going out onto the internet. It went. I think it was. Actually, sorry, it was ordering a product. It went to a well-known e-commerce retailer, and reasoned that was the right app on the phone's app screen based on what it knew of most popular shopping apps, created a flow with screenshots automatically across 3 different modes, and it was able to describe what it had done and why it had made those choices. That was mind-blowing. That was a few weeks ago.
Exactly. It's reasoning now. It's not only giving you an output, it's telling you the reasons behind it.
Yes.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal.
So,
Um,
so what is the work for workers? I guess, in your perspective, what do you see as the work for humans? What is our job going to be?
That's a great question. That begs us to talk about the topic of job displacement.
Right.
I think how it's going to affect the workplace in the near future and far future it's going to change the way that we work. Um, how people usually describe it or get scared of AI is that it's going to take your job, um, and that has happened throughout the history. So it's not the time that we shut our blinders and we focus on just what we do and think about what are the strategic things that we can do, what are the things that AI cannot replace. I think we need to think about how can AI as a capability, how can AI as a tool augment what we are already doing. So constant learning is something that needs to be fostered in the organization and as an individuals, so that we are upskilling ourselves constantly with AI tools, um, and then we are using those to augment our work. We are using those to make our work better. I'll give an example. So my original background is in architecture, and back in the day, and this is my favorite example, by the way.
Hmm.
um, when I started in architecture, we used to do these renderings and
Hmm.
drawings as part of our presentations. And we used to use tools like 3ds Max and SketchUp. And
Hmm.
for one render, for one perspective, back in the early days, it used to take what's from 6 hours to 24 hours for
Hmm.
real life renders. And these were not even the final renders. These were the like conceptual renders, as we used to call them.
Okay.
Now, today, with generative AI, you go to Midjourney, you can do it almost instantly. You give it
Wow.
a prompt, and it gives you conceptual renders. I have seen some architects do that, and they can tinker it as they are doing it. There are more models which can do it more realistically. So, I'm giving an example of how it is affecting design creation. Whenever you are generating some content or content creation, let's say that,
Hmm.
whether it is 3D, 2D, multimodal, that's how fast it has become. So, what does that mean? Is it taking architects out of their jobs? It is augmenting their skill to think fast and arrive at a form, a function, a certain idea, certain concept much faster, rather than replacing architects.
Right. I mean, I suppose what you're saying is instead of thinking it, we should be thinking about it differently, which is that people keep thinking these are the jobs for AI, these are the jobs for humans. I think what you're saying, at least if I'm hearing it right, is it's the human AI team together, like in the same way that
Exactly.
on any team you have the project manager, the technical leads, the subject matter experts, all of that, and you work together as a human team across maybe different time zones, different countries, different cultures. It's almost like we have now this synthetic team member or members. But in your example, I suppose you could even see a homeowner, especially if it's a home that's not too esoteric or eclectic, saying I have a standard 1950s era colonial. I want to do a expansion backwards onto a this square foot area, and it could generate it for you. You wouldn't even now an architect would probably have to review it from a legal compliance permitting
Yeah.
perspective, but it may change even the job of an architect, for example, to be almost a structural engineer architect, where you have to. It's not just the design side; it's also the legal, financial, various other constraints. It's almost like compliance-driven architecture or something.
I mean, definitely it can do that. And if architects are skilled in the tools themselves, I mean, certainly people can generate their own ideas, but who knows, there might be tools that can help you evolve those designs as
Hmm.
we talk
Hmm.
and as we speak. Um, Possibilities are endless. But what you brought up around legal and compliance issues, I think we are already seeing that with so many applications for reviewing what already exists, the large data sets and documents that
Right.
already exist. We are getting a head start in doing those reviews. This is an example. Um, I think that brings us to the topic of getting help from AI or augmenting our work from a personalized space.
Right. Yeah, that's true. How will it change the personal experience people have working? Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's, I suppose, if you think about the work no longer being this rote generation of data from data, then that often is the rote work. That's the least personalized work we do, which is if you're an analyst working, say, on a major financial analysis for an M&A transaction, you had a large team of people working in Excel sheets doing relatively boring late night work to crunch numbers so that you could make different causes of analysis and present options to the management team. Now imagine if you had an AI and a human team working together. You'll be working on how do you the client relationship, understanding the different scenarios, potentially using multiple different models and playing them against each other and wargaming and figuring out. So I think that will be a much more individualistic work experience. The idea of teams sitting together doing large scale number data processing, generation, content writing, content farms in cheap countries, people churning out bad content for SEO, those kinds of non-personal work experiences, potentially call centers, right, going away, the
Yeah.
frontier of support. So any kind of job where it tends to be rote, mass produced, mass process, like anything you could write an SOP for probably is an AI job. Anything that you can't write an SOP for may not be, and that makes work much more personal by its very nature. I would think. I mean, just guessing here.
I think that brings up two very important topics in terms of AI when we use it for personal work or when we use it for individual work or
Mhm.
augmenting individual work. One of them is security. I think everybody who's using AI as a tool today definitely needs to at least think about the security and data that they input, because how do you use these individual tools that are available in the market for personal use? Just for example, Chat GPT.
Sure.
Um, the data that you put in is not yours anymore. Very bluntly saying,
It trains the model.
it trains the model. So be very careful of what data you put in. However, when you're doing it in the enterprise domain, it's different. It's how you create your own IT infrastructure that will take care of the security. But when you're doing it for personal work, it's be very, very careful on what data you are putting, and definitely don't put any company or organizational data on these
It's
platforms.
interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. We built an integration with the OpenAI API for our product, which allows you to generate requirements and test cases and various artifacts. It's a simple first feature. We know there's more to come. Obviously, we're just scratching the surface. But even in that, when you use the API of OpenAI, for example, they don't use the data for training, which they do if you use
Yeah,
the interactive interface. But
yeah,
they do retain it for 30 days for quality control purposes. So even the AI API version, again, the data isn't going to be in the model, but they will be on their servers. And if you're in GDPR, if you're doing, or in the US, or it's like in California, states where there's privacy rules, or it's just company confidential data, you could very easily fall foul of your own company's rules and the industry regulations if you're not careful. But
yeah,
I do see the future as being almost the detachable AI, where the main model is being trained, and then people can then download effectively a queryable model that's not learning, but it's queryable. And Apple says now they're going to be able to run an LLM on iPhone existing hardware. I mean, that's
yeah,
crazy. Eventually, you see your phone will be autonomous from the
yeah,
assistant on board, and presumably Android too. The model itself will just be synchronized. They'll download the latest model overnight, but it won't be live querying the model. So there's ways, I think, to have data privacy and enterprise and learning, but it's going to be interesting
yeah,
to see what we end up with.
yeah, 100%. So think
What
about
do you think of
security.
Yeah, and what do you think about the ethical side of things? We talked a lot about security and the one of the other aspects is ethical. Like, for example, there's a lawsuit now going on about content, and the New York Times has just sued I think Microsoft and OpenAI around their data was used to train the model without their consent. But I'm sure there's many other ethical concerns about music being created. And what are your thoughts on how we're going to deal with the content ethical creation issues?
That is the exactly the second point that I was going to point
Oh,
about
sorry.
after security. So thank you for bringing that up, Adam, because this is I think ethical consideration is super important, and I'm going to talk about more from a personal level, because from an organizational level, it gets tackled um, more at a company and governance and data governance level. So I'm not gonna talk about that. From a personal level, when you're using AI tools, it's the question is, where do you draw the line? I'll
Right.
give a very, very common example that we have been seeing um, was people using AI to generate content and publishing it and calling it their own, whether it is as books, as articles, using it to do papers for their educational programs. Where do you draw the line? I think ethical accountability is something that's going to be of prime importance when we are using these tools. And then, even in content creation, when you are creating content using AI, for example, you create an art and publish it online. Do you say that you used AI? Do you in what in what capability did you use it? What is that model that we all should be following? I think that is the biggest question when we think about ethical considerations on a personal level. Where do we draw the line? Of course, there are things that can recognize the generated content. There are tools that are being developed every day. For example, I
Hmm.
was talking to an educator and I asked them this question, that students can be ethical, but when they are not, how do you understand that this is a generated content? So they are in active development of softwares which will tackle that, but it's going to be a long fight.
Right. And the other thing is, what's the remedy? Because, well, there's a couple of things. One is there's a grey line. It seems to be harder on images, but maybe more than, and maybe I don't know why, but it seems to be more on images than on text. Like, for example, when you create, if you ask it to generate an image based on on its feeling or on some concept, it will create an image for you that is unique, but you
Yeah.
can often find the influences.
Yes.
And those influences are probably copyrighted art. But as a human, now if you take enough copyrighted materials and use them in a unique way, the law says that's considered fair use because it's a derivative piece. Um, and so the law already attempts to, for human created content, where you're creating something that's based on something like the famous Andy Warhol designs of various products that were combined. Now, Campbell's Soup didn't sue Andy Warhol, I don't think, for copyright infringement. Maybe they could. If an AI did that, maybe they did. But then the second part is, even if we could find a shining line between what's ethically new work and what's not, the training model is already built. So if, let's say, the New York Times wins the lawsuit, traditionally there would be injunctive relief would be, we need to stop that harm. So we would have to extract the New York Times data out of the LMM. But I don't think
Yeah.
no one knows how you can't do that. So
Yeah.
so either the whole model is illegal or not. But it's not like you can extract a copyrighted work out like you could with a traditional content system, where you could remove extracted content, the legal content, separate it from the legal content. But it's all in this giant model which is self-learned. I mean, the door is wide open. The horse is bolted down the field and possibly about to win the race. I mean, how do we deal with that?
That is a question that whose answers is going to keep evolving, and that's why, like I said, personal accountability becomes like it takes the stage. Personal ethical accountability takes the stage when we think of what's the line, where we are willing to draw that line. Um, Another example, I think you already brought this up from a copyright perspective. So YouTube, right? YouTube
Hmm.
content creation.
Yep.
When you are creating a YouTube video, I think there's a limit of around 3 seconds or something like that. I might be off in terms of
That's
what
right. That's right.
exactly
Yep.
what's the limit, that you can borrow other video clips to make your own video. So if you say, let's say 3 seconds is the number. If you borrow 3 seconds from 100 different videos and make your own 300 seconds video, that's not copyright infringement. Now, this
Right.
is a very specific technicality that YouTube is using, which can be taught to a model, and it can generate unlimited videos using that without giving the credit. So, is that ethical? Is that
I
how
mean,
do you?
right. In the case of that law or that rule, it's probably around the idea of parody. Many YouTube channels will take movie clips and attempt to do parody, and that seems to work. I suppose you have to have it. Maybe it needs to be X% plus Y% original is the new recipe, because that and if that but then if that's text AI generated commentary, that's
Yeah.
probably legal. I mean, it's ethical. I mean, it probably is. I mean, it is. It's if a computer can create well-reasoned commentary on movies and put it together into a podcast, and it can use actors, those voices it's digitized to create it, and it's entertaining and people watch it, and the ratings go up on YouTube. I mean, it seems valid if creepy.
Yeah, exactly. So it's valid, it's legal, but is
It's
it ethical? That's the moral. Um,
Well,
I
so
think
if you
dilemma.
knew, well, the question then is, I think, if you knew it was AI generated, it's like the reverse Turing test. If you knew it was generated, and would you still watch it? Would you still enjoy it? If you knew that it was 100% synthetic, but it sounded human, they'd got voice actors that they modulated, and if everyone loved it and it was a viral hit, I suppose if humans respond, of course, then there's probably bots clicking on it because just
I
just
mean,
imagine. Yeah, it's interesting.
I think we would, as humans, and this goes into the behavioral psychology domain. I won't comment too much on it. As humans, we would. I think our instinct is to get value of what we are getting immediately. That immediacy factor is there.
Hmm.
Um, that immediate value is more than
Right,
the value
right.
that comes later. So
And as long as it was
I think,
appropriately right, so if it was labeled as right, the AI movie trailer podcast versus whatever it otherwise was, as long as we knew, then I think it's
yeah,
completely ethically fine. It's when it's being hidden from us, then I think our trust is being violated, and we feel. So one of the ones that was quite scary is I was at a testing conference in Germany, what was it, a few months ago, and they were doing a side-by-side comparison. They had some famous songs being sung by the singer and
yeah,
by a AI, and none of us could tell the difference. Rihanna and
yeah,
various other artists. So then,
yeah,
I mean, and ethically, you could generate new, and then they had like Frank Sinatra singing Coolio and all these other strange combinations, which is very
yeah,
funny. And I'm sure people would watch that on YouTube, and probably it's legal, but it
yeah.
didn't feel ethically right somehow. So I guess to your answer, it didn't quite feel right. I can't write a law. I can't write a statute book or a policy for terms of service, but it didn't feel right.
Yeah, I think you brought up a great point that as far as sorry, as long as we know, um, I mean, and then we have a choice, right? Like
Hmm.
as long as we know that it is legal, the rights are compensated, then it's a choice whether to consume that content or not, or consume whatever that is being created or not. um, I think that lifts the moral responsibility from the consumer,
Hmm.
and it also safeguards the ones who have created the content using the AI. I think that might be the route, immediate route at least, that we are going to
Right.
see.
Knowing that it's changing so fast.
That was the part one of an amazing conversation, and we will release the part two of this very insightful conversation next weekend. So please stay tuned to GSDC Tech Talk podcast.